So, growing up in Dayton, were you aware of funk history and its connection to Dayton?
Actually, no, I was not. I actually learned about Dayton's importance in the history of funk when we had Pop and Pete out from LA. Actually, he's living in Vegas now, but he was the one that mentioned to me, like, hey, if I'm coming out to Dayton, I'd love to check out a few things. And then I was connected with I'm so sorry, guys. I'm trying to think of the name of, it's David Webb. You guys have been talking with him, with him, and I learned more about the history at that time. So, but yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then second question. While some outsiders perceive Dayton as a small city with limited offerings, many Daytonians would counter that notion, asserting that the city boasts a rich and vibrant history. Since you lived in a big city for a short period of time but moved back, what have you noticed since about the city, and how would you describe the city of Dayton's culture?
So I think when you're from Dayton, it's hard to live somewhere else just because of the community that we have here. Downtown Dayton Partnership does a wonderful job getting the community together, putting together events that are like events that would happen in a bigger city. There's a lot of young urban professionals that are really trying to make Dayton an incredible place, and whenever there's a setback, it just seems to make that group of people stronger and work harder towards their mission. I love being a part of Dayton. Like I had mentioned before, I missed Dayton when I was living in Chicago, and that was because of the tight-knit community that Dayton has. So.
Definitely. So part of our story for the documentary is looking at how music gives artists and a community a voice. Realizing that funk was created out of a time of social unrest and injustice, how do the arts and music give individuals as well as the community the opportunity to express themselves?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, looking at how music and gives artists and community a voice. So funk was created out of a time of social unrest and injustice, and like that's what fueled the artists to create the music. How do the arts and music give individuals and the community the opportunity to express themselves? And then like it could also be like, do you think this applies well with movements now, such as like BLM?
Oh, absolutely. You know, things are much still like they were at that time. There's unrest still, especially with the shooting that happened in the Oregon district several years ago. You know, obviously art is birthed upon people that want to express how they feel about these various things that are going on, and that just never really stops. So being able to have, I'm sorry, I cannot talk today. Guys, I guess I'm not really sure what you mean by this question. If you can rephrase. Are you asking are there enough opportunities available, or should there be more opportunities available?
Like
or
kind of how does the connection of like when there's like, and I guess you can kind of go into like how you talked about hip hop being like from a specific culture and trying to like express themselves in that way. Like how does that opportunity like connect the community, if that makes sense? Like when you express yourselves through art and music, like I don't know, sorry, I'm trying to like reword it.
It's okay.
So that makes sense, because I get it. It's like kind of like a tough question. We're just trying to like bring in like, because funk came out of a time
Sure.
where
When it was hard.
When it was hard, like how does having music and art like and being able to express like help artists and like dancers in this case like express themselves in those times of difficulties?
For sure. You know, I think whenever something that's difficult is going on in our community, that people tend to come together. As you could see with the COVID pandemic, people came together for that. People were helping their neighbors. And so when something happens in the community, like around the time of the pandemic when the riots were happening, one of the things that I did as a studio owner was highlight all of my instructors of color. And we all came together and we could support that group of people who were going through fear from, obviously walking out their front door. And showing, and me being a person not of color, to be able to say, I support this group of people, clearly. And I won't allow that type of hatred in my doors here at the studio. And that I want everyone to know that if they feel those ways, that they don't even try to come in the front door. And right after all of that happened, we were inspired to make pieces to support our feelings toward this. When COVID happened, we kept dancing. We actually had our recital in a campground outside, and we built a stage. And we had, I know many of the artists in the community were creating work that showed that, this isn't going to stop us from creating. For instance, we kept classes going on Zoom for a very, very long period of time. And then when we came back, we were so much stronger. So with the social issues that are constantly happening, even in today's, the last year or two I feel like it's been new things, but it's also the same old things, school shootings and all of these other things. It really just inspires artists to create more in-depth pieces, but also not have the fear to speak up and out. So.
Perfect. So then this kind of goes along with that. So outside of the national struggle, the civil rights movement and political struggles, the city of Dayton was facing its fair share of economic and social hardships during the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Why is it important to keep a culture of arts and music alive in a place like Dayton?
I think it's really important. I think that a lot of talented artists themselves are drawn to areas that have more opportunities. So they are drawn to LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, all these big cities. And so they leave Dayton and places like Dayton. So it's really important for our arts organizations to open up opportunities for these artists to stay here. And of course, that means expanding the arts community. Otherwise, we're not going to have the artists sticking around. And that includes dancers as well, and other hip hop artists that could find jobs and more opportunities elsewhere. And I do think that the city has done a great job of creating programs within the city where people can be employed, where artists can be employed, where they don't feel like they do have to leave, which is how I did feel when I was younger. But I do feel now in today's environment, especially with the city of Dayton, that there are plentiful opportunities. I mean, we could have more, but I do feel like it is a place where an artist could stay. So.
That's awesome. All right, a couple more questions, then we can take a pause.
Okay.
So your lifelong journey in dance, starting at a young age, has been a consistent passion for the arts, particularly in hip hop. So born in Dayton, you briefly lived in Chicago, driven by the pursuit of more dance opportunities. What factors or experiences led to your initial involvement in dance, especially hip hop, and what influenced your decision to return to Dayton to open a dance studio here specifically?
So I've been dancing since I was 7 years old, and I started here in a suburb of Dayton at a dance studio taking jazz dance classes. And you couldn't take hip hop dance classes in a studio at this time. Actually, people didn't want hip hop in dance studios. Hip hop artists were trying to, like the originators of hip hop dance were trying to teach classes in studios, and were being, told to go away, and we don't want that in here. So there was no hip hop. However, people my age were exposed heavily to MTV, VH1, and so we saw things in these videos that we wanted to do, but there was no way for me to learn them. So it wasn't until I was a little older that I was able to get those opportunities, and to get those opportunities I had to live in Chicago, which is why I moved away. And, living in Chicago, I really missed home. I really missed Dayton. So I came back and decided to create what Chicago had for the city of Dayton, so that I could enjoy living in Dayton, but also still have access to the culture and the hip hop dance that I wanted.
So for many years you were a nurse, but eventually took a risk and decided to open the studio and teach dance full time. What network of people supported you and helped you feel confident in taking this leap of faith?
I'm really not sure what gave me the confidence to open up a dance studio. I think when I was younger, I was a lot more willing to take risks than I am now, which is probably good that I started this when I was younger. I didn't think about all the things that could potentially happen, so I just sort of went for it. And I think that's kind of part of an artist mentality sometimes. It's just like, sounds great, I'll do it. So what was the other part of the question?
So what network of people supported you?
I had a lot of support going into this. I had support from my mother, I had support from my father, and all of my friends thought that this was great. I had been trying to run a dance studio out of my neighborhood when I was a young child, and so everyone expected this from me. So they wanted to support me in my dreams in any way they could. Also working as a nurse, even my coworkers at the hospital were like, you need to go for this. Like, this is something that you should be doing right now. And then of course the dance community here as well. So I had I was already dancing before I opened up the studio here locally and had a crew that I was dancing with, and we all wanted to sort of do this together as well.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just checking if I have this later in a question. But so artists often have to take that leap of faith. So do you want to talk a little bit more on why you think specifically with arts and music, that passion is really what drives people to take that risk?
I think when you're watching a piece of really good art, it's sort of one of those things that gives you goosebumps. There's a really deep feeling that artists get when they are experiencing the arts, such as theater or dance or fine arts. And it's really an indescribable experience when you're moved by something. And when you feel that strongly about something, it just makes sense to dive into it and to just go for it, because the other alternative is to not have those feelings. So I'm told on a daily basis how grateful people are for what we have here, and I get the number one question that people ask me is, can you believe that you did this? And when I sit and think about it, it's hard to believe. So no, I can't believe that I did this. It is something that more communities need, and I do feel that the city of Dayton is lucky to have. That's hard for me to say since I'm the owner of the studio, but it's important to be able to have a dance space where boys feel comfortable is important. To be able to have a space where hip hop artists are not only invited, but they're encouraged to come and share their art, as well as a place for me to employ hip hop artists as well. That's important to me. It's important for me to provide the educational piece, which is necessary. With hip hop, people try to sell hip hop that isn't actually hip hop, and that includes dancing. And so you could sign up for a hip hop class somewhere, and the students that are in the class don't know the history, they don't know the basics. They really are just kind of putting on pop music and doing movement that isn't really even hip hop. And so that's frustrating to many people that are, heavily involved in the hip hop community and culture. It's offensive too. So to be able to provide a service that is authentic and brings together community in that way is important to me. But I feel like it's necessary that people have the option to go somewhere where they're going to be able to have the service that is authentic.
Right.
So, but the the city is appreciative of Funk Lab. We're invited downtown to perform at many of their events, Art in the City, the downtown Dayton holiday parade we have done, and a lot of the community invites us out to perform. We do probably anywhere between 6 to 10 community performances every summer and fall. The Dayton Dragons invite us out to perform there, and they actually hire our dancers too for various entertainment positions, like the dancing bat boy is someone that always comes from us, which is fun. So we're well known, we can get these kids jobs. We also have a DJ program for kids, and the kids that have gone through our program are now working as DJs and being hired in the community to DJ events and weddings and things. It's exciting. So, and that wasn't a service you could find anywhere else either. So it's a lot of fun, and I think I do feel appreciated here in the community.
That's and you started talking about how important education is, and we are going to get into that a lot in our documentary as well, just like the education in schools and in the communities. So as we've been researching, we learned that the background and culture of funk music is embedded in Dayton, and staying true to the culture is very important in keeping funk music alive. So with Dayton being a hub for funk culture, do you think people here are more accepting of education surrounding different cultures, even like the culture of hip hop?
I would have to say no. We have a long way to go. I feel like the people that come here are, but I can't say that I've experienced that in the community as a whole. I feel like there is still a lot of prejudices. There's a lot of unwillingness to look at it in different ways. So I think we're getting there, but I don't think that we're there yet. So.
Right, yeah, that kind of like makes sense as to why funk music, like one of our questions is like, is it dead? Like, are we able to bring it back, and like, why hasn't that? If we were so successful in it, hasn't it stayed, as prevalent in Dayton? So that totally makes sense.
I think it's coming back. I think that in terms of funk and dance, some of those older styles of funk, locking, those styles are making a comeback. But a lot on the West Coast more so than what we've got here. We're usually about 5 to 7 years after things get pretty cool out there. So, as you know, like some songs that were popular back in the 80s and 90s are like, they're being re-released, and then everyone loves those again. And I do feel like in funk dance that's happening. It's kind of an LA thing right now. So I think it's gonna make its way out here. We offer popping, locking, and funk classes here at the studio, and they're well received. So, but it is a small demographic of people that are interested in that right now. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So this is kind of going back to a little bit what we talked about in the beginning. But at the time you named your studio, you said you didn't know that Dayton was known as the birthplace of funk, and the culture of funk is in Dayton's roots. Do you think this has helped lead to the success of your studio in any way?
I don't know that it's helped with the success of the studio, but it's definitely helped with the success of the city. The city has sponsored many events. There's a mural downtown, which I know you guys are probably aware of, and there have been multiple concerts that have been given down at Levitt, and so I do think that that does encourage people to sort of enjoy those music styles again. But I'm not sure if that's the same community that's like, I want to go take a dance class. So has it helped the studio? I would have to say probably not right now. But I do think that it's helped funk in general within the city, so yeah.
So we're touching more on education still. So you mentioned how all of your classes start with a lesson of the history of the style of dance that the class is. Why do you feel that this is important to share, and what impact does it make on the students?
I think that the students need to know why they're doing what they're doing, so that they can really decide, like, do I have the same feelings as the people that created this for wanting to do it? A lot of the history of hip hop is lost, it's unrecorded. There was nobody saying, okay, you know, hip hop started today, I'm gonna write this down so we can put a book out. It was just a bunch of people jamming, you know, and loving dance and loving hip hop and loving music. Nobody was really writing these things down. So a lot of what hip hop dance history anyway is he said, she said. There's some specifics, but there's also like, well, but do you know that this was also happening at the same time? So with that being said, hip hop is so young that people that started hip hop are still around, some of them, and they're here to tell their stories, and they've been here at Funk Lab to tell their stories as well. And whenever they do that, it's an extra level of inspiration toward all of the people that are listening. And you know, our students here know that it's a culture. It's not you're coming to take dance class and you leave. You're here because you love hip hop. You're here because you love the music. You know, you're here because you love to freestyle. And one of the things about hip hop dance classes here versus other places is that we encourage freestyle. We want our students to be able to get into a circle and go to the middle and have the confidence and the creativity to just dance. And you're not standing in two lines and learning a routine. And so that's really important to us here because that is the meaning of hip hop. There was no, you know, groups of kids forming choreographed, you know, pieces. That's not what they do. They went to the park and they put the music on and they got in a circle and they would go in the middle and they would dance. And so keeping that history alive rather than sort of that commercialized aspect of hip hop where, yeah, let's all learn a routine and put it on a stage. And that's the only way we're doing hip hop. So I think if the students see that the majority of dance studios offer hip hop in a way where it's not authentic, that they might think that that's what they should be doing. So it's important for me to be able to say here as their teacher, that's actually not correct. This is what we should be doing, and this is why. This is how it started. This is the meaning of hip hop. So.
Why is it important to you that dancers of all types, colors, shapes, abilities, ages, genders be able to participate in a style of dance that is pushing so hard to keep its culture from changing?
So people that started hip hop were people that, you know, didn't fit in other places. They didn't have the money to go in a dance studio, or maybe their circumstances left them in an area that was impoverished, or whatever you have, they didn't fit in. You know, they weren't this, you know, Caucasian, like, you know, female that with this, you know, tall, slender figure. And so there isn't anything wrong with that, of course, either, but that's not what that community was. And so they could get together and still enjoy dance without having to have those societal restrictions on appearance. And so that's the amazing thing about hip hop is, and especially with age, people call us all the time and they say, I've always wanted to learn how to do hip hop, but I'm like 35. That's what they'll say. I'm like, great, that's the perfect time to start learning. And you'll hear with other styles, like, well, if you don't start by the age of 8, you can forget it. And so with ageism, we want everyone to know that you can dance and you can start learning whenever you want. And then, you know, with people of color, hip hop is for the people of color. I am a guest to this culture myself. So that is a priority of mine, is making sure that that group of people not only feels welcome, but they feel like this is their space. And again, I'm a guest to that. Obviously with a lot of stereotypes and prejudice in, you know, our country's past, they haven't been welcome in dance studios. So making sure that, again, they feel very welcome here. We also welcome dancers of various sexualities and genders here. And we want everyone to feel like this is a place that they can be themselves, because that's really important when you're an artist, is to be able to live who you are. I think where else I could go with this. What was the second part of that question?
So it was like, I'll just,
Okay, just.
with it, to be able to participate in a style of dance that is pushing so hard to keep its culture from changing. So maybe that helps.
So one of the things that hip hop dance is doing is it's becoming increasingly commercialized. So the LA scene is taking hip hop and they're fusing it with jazz and other styles, and they're requiring these hip hop dancers have all of this jazz experience and all of this ballet in order for them to book jobs. And the lines are becoming very, very blurred in terms of what actually is hip hop dance now, because there are so many influences in it. And that's pretty typical for the evolutionary process of most styles of dance, unless you're talking about ballet, which hasn't changed in a very, very long time. But there's a lot of push to make sure that we are preserving the art, and that while we can appreciate the evolutionary process of hip hop, that we're also able to still see the foundations that were laid and distinguish between the different types. So, and this would include, disco, house, vogue, break-in, pop-in, and locking, which popping and locking are two completely different styles. And as most people know, they've heard the term pop and lock, which is something that, the commercialized industry said, let's call it the pop and lock. So, but if you know anything about hip hop dance, you know that those are two completely different styles. And so the hip hop community really wants to make sure that they're educating others that, oh, well, popping is this and locking is actually this. So there is a lot of push to keep that preservation of the hip hop styles. So.
Yeah, we've been also kind of seeing that even with funk too, because a lot of artists that are popular now will kind of adapt funk songs or use pieces of it, and it's just we're kind of questioning is that evolutionary process, like you said, what's good and or how do we keep the foundations? It's interesting to see how that goes across all of the arts, no matter what.
For sure, and I think if you look at art in general over a long period of time, you can see that it inevitably happens, but that's why it's so important to teach the history. So if that does disappear, that you still know how it started. So, but we really try to, here at our studio, we really try to have classes in those specific styles where there's not that blend. So we'll have a popping class rather than a commercialized hip hop class. Come take hip hop. So yeah, it's really, really important. And I do think that people that created these styles have that fear, I don't want to see what I created go away. But then you have some that are I can see it going away, but I just want to make sure that I'm remembered for what I did and what that actually was. So.
In the piece that you shared with us after your pre-interview, The Evolution of Hip Hop, one of the elements was funk dance. Why did you choose to include this in there, and how did it help shape hip hop?
So obviously with Soul Train and disco, that was one of the first hip-hop influenced styles that we saw in our country after the movement came from the West African area. And of course it was on TV, and it was something that people were really getting into at that time. I felt like it was really important to note in that piece that that was one of our first experiences with hip-hop culture. It wasn't break-in, in the Bronx, which would be considered the start of hip-hop dance, but it was the influences coming over, and we wanted to make sure that we were educating the public about everything that happened and being very specific about how that happened.
So we've been talking a lot about the importance of arts education within schools and the community. What positive effects do you think music and dance education can bring this next generation of Dayton?
So we were just at Santa Silent Disco, and a bunch of our hip hop kids were out there, and they formed a circle, and every single one of them was going in the middle and dancing. And then you could see the rest of the people that probably weren't in a dance class just sitting there staring like, oh my goodness. And it's hard to imagine, like, I wonder what they're thinking. Are they thinking, I wish I could go in there and do that? Or who are these people? So, but that confidence. And I do feel like, a large percentage of the population appreciates art and wants to do art, but maybe doesn't have that confidence to do it or hasn't been given the opportunities to learn. But once you've been given those opportunities to learn, like, it can really just help you with so many things. Communicating when you don't have the right words, number one. I think the way that you walk and the way that you present yourself and the confidence that you exude is different when you've been an artist, when you've been on a stage, or when you've been in a circle and everybody's been watching you. It helps you with, if you're working in a team environment in dance or the arts, working together on a project or a show or a play or a piece is excellent. Helps you work with others and develop relationships. But just in general, just like being able to share your passion with others, like-minded individuals, which artists are different. So I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
So dance and music education has clearly impacted your life from being a student and then now on the other end becoming a teacher. How do you see arts education impact young people's lives or like carry out through the rest of their lives if they start?
So I have an example of this. I have an ex-student who, he is an adult now, but he took here for a very long time, and now he's a school teacher. And he makes these videos on TikTok where he is like breakdancing in the classroom. And it's so funny, and he's got quite a following, and it's so fun, and he's been able to still keep dance. And he gets these kids to respect him because he can still do cool stuff. And I have another student, he's about to graduate med school, and he's an incredible b-boy. And I'm like, are you dancing for your patients? And I know that he is. And it's just like another way to connect with people in future positions, even if you don't become a professional dancer. Of course, I have many students who have gone on to become professional dancers. One of my students is in the National Touring Hip Hop Nutcracker right now, which comes to Dayton next weekend, and we're all gonna go see her. So if anybody's around for that. But it's just, I've been able to see these particular students where they've been successful here, then go on to become successful adults. So if they learn how to follow rules here and work with the team here, then that translates into their adult lives. So.
Awesome. So our story not only focuses on the history of funk music, but also preserving it, which you kind of talked about preservation earlier, which is awesome. When thinking about funk and hip hop within the Dayton community, why is an important part of Dayton's history that needs to be preserved?
One more time.
When thinking about funk and hip hop within the Dayton community, why is it an important part of Dayton's history that needs to be preserved?
I think every city had a specific impact on hip hop culture and funk culture, and it was a little different in every city. Communication wasn't like it is now, where you can get on social media and find out what other cities are doing. So it was very individualized to the area. So while we want to preserve hip hop and funk in general, we also want to preserve what was our city's contribution to that. And also educating people. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't aware that Dayton was, the birthplace of funk for a very long time. Nobody ever told me that. So I'm not sure that I went seeking for that information like maybe I should have, but also it was just never really out there. So I do appreciate that our city is educating people about that now. But I do also think that there were there were things that were different about the way Dayton did it, than other cities. And so what was our contribution to that? And I'm still learning, so.
Okay, so you knew that nursing wasn't fulfilling your life in the same way that dancing did. Like so many early artists, they pursued their dreams with no reassurance of making money. I guess I did kind of ask this question earlier, but if you want to add any more,
Okay.
why is it important to you to risk that secure job and pursue your passion? Or I guess you could even talk about like why you think it's important for young people to have access to that so that they can pursue their passions.
So I didn't come from a family that had a lot, and I actually am first generation college grad. So when I was growing up, my parents wanted more for me than what they had. So it was more or less like, we love that you love dancing, but we really think you should go to college and get a job that's not that. And so, and I really did take that to heart. So when I was in high school, I worked at a nursing home, and I was in the dietary department, and I would feed the older patients and residents, and I would see the nurses walking around, and they were the important people there, or so I thought. So I thought that maybe this is what I want to do. I've always loved helping people, so whether that's in education or just taking care of people in general. So that's why I went to nursing school. So there really was never like, I'm only going to do nursing for a period of time and then I'm going to dance. I always did them both at the same time. I continued to work as a nurse up until right before COVID. So I worked as a registered nurse for 15 years. And it was never like I can only do one or the other until I just didn't have enough time anymore. But I actually really love nursing. With that being said, I have a lot to thank nursing for, because I could have never opened a dance studio without having that career, because again, I didn't come from a family that had financial support for me to do that, so I did a lot of saving. It was around $50,000 to open Funk Lab when we were in a smaller location. And so I saved every penny from all of my nursing paychecks to pay for that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have that plan in place. I was happy to leave the nursing profession so that I could just do this. But one thing that I would tell the future generation that wanted, as an artist that wanted to sort of branch out and just start something like this, is to make sure that you do some planning and that you don't throw something together overnight. But like I said, I didn't really also realize all of the risk that was involved by doing this, nor did I care. I think that if it would have failed, I would have been like, okay, I'll move on. It's when you get a little older, I think that you think more about those things. So starting young is also probably a good thing.
So you noted the importance of preserving culture by knowing the history behind movements, choosing accurate genres of music, and teaching your students why all this is important. When others say that you don't fit the qualifications of being an instructor of hip hop, how do you stay so passionate and continuing to do so? And like you said, like making sure that you identify that you're a guest to the culture, but like with all that backlash, that has to be hard sometimes. So how do you keep that?
For sure. So it's just not everyone. I think if it were the majority of people of color saying I shouldn't be doing this, that I probably would decide like, maybe this isn't what I should be doing. I feel like I'm not doing what I set out to do. One of the things that I make sure to do is that I am paying my instructors of color appropriately, that I'm treating them well, as they should, that I am giving them the credit as they should receive, that I'm creating a diverse environment, and an environment where I'm listening to them and their concerns. So, I have the resources to do that, and if I can help provide opportunities for those people to create as well, then I think we can be working together. But again, yes, I am a guest of the culture, and I do feel like I am respected by the majority. of the hip hop dance scene, you know, the few that don't think that I should be in this position. You know, I'm always willing and wanting to work through that and have conversations.
So, the last couple questions are like in a different agenda a little bit. So if you need a break or want
Okay, I think it's okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. How are we doing time?
We're good. We're at 43 minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as we talked about before with the ideas that people have on who should be able to teach certain cultures, how can the Dayton community come to understand the importance of cultures like funk and hip hop, even if they don't fit into those cultures themselves?
So I think the people that are into the Dayton scene, the Dayton funk scene, the Dayton music scene are kind of like the same people that are coming into here. They're very accepting. I don't know that they need, and they're educated, and they know that they're guests. I think that the people that, again, are coming to these, you know, shows and various other productions, you know, that they're in the right place mentally. How do we reach out to those that aren't? I think there's so much going on in today's society with politics that division that we see every day needs to be broken down before we could even think about the art side of things. So it's really sad, but I do feel like there is a huge rift. Some people, you know, they'll shy away from hip hop because they feel like we're promoting gang violence. That's how old school that thought is. They don't realize there's so much more to hip hop than something like that. It's confusing to me because I live this every day and I don't ever see anything like that remotely. So when things like that come up, it's more of a confusion than it is anything else. But there are very much still people like that. I just don't associate. So it's hard for me to think about what they could do. I think that there's just so much closed-mindedness. How do we break through that? That's on my mind a lot. So, yeah.
So your studio clearly makes a huge impact on all of the students, faculty, and families that engage with your classes and events. Do you think your studio helps preserve funk music and funk dance and Dayton's place in it?
Oh, 100%. Funk Lab is well known throughout the country and even in the world. And it does put Dayton on the map for sure in terms of hip hop. So, I'm sorry, what was the other?
So do you think your studio helps preserve funk music and Dayton's place in it?
So yeah, I mean, even in the state of Ohio, there's some really great studios throughout the state of Ohio. There's 10K Movement in Cleveland, there's Flavor Flow and I Am Dance in Columbus, and then there are some other facilities that are in Cincinnati that are really great. And for Dayton, you know, Funk Lab's it. So we are here to show people that this is hip hop, and that if you like it and you love it and you want to be a part of it, that you're welcome here. I'm not sure exactly what you want in terms of your response or my response. So
I don't know if this is exactly the same question, but I have a side question.
Okay.
So when you're like picking music, and if you're able to talk specifically more about funk music, but
Yeah,
whatever works.
for sure.
But like
for sure.
when you're picking music for your classes, like how is it important to you that you stay true to like the genres and yeah?
For sure. So my funk teacher his name is DeMarco English. I should have had him come in here today and talk with you guys about funk specifically. And if you want to talk with him, let me know. He's amazing. So with that being said, here at the studio, we have so many different styles that the teachers here really specialize and hone in on one thing. So he is our funk teacher, and that isn't really my specialty. I'm more of I trained in breaking, so I'm more about the break beats. But with our funk music, he absolutely uses music from the 70s. And that's what he likes, that's what he enjoys. He's getting the kids to like and enjoy this music too. But we don't teach these styles to music that's not appropriate. So if it's a funk class, then it's funk music. If it's breaking class, one of the first things I'll tell the students is, hey guys, we're not listening to Nicki Minaj. We're doing like some old school James Brown today. And this is what that is. But speaking specific of funk music, that wouldn't necessarily be my line of work, although I appreciate it. But if you would like to talk with DeMarco, he could go on and on. So, and again, hip hop is so specialized that we just have to do that so that the students are getting the appropriate education. But yeah, we're definitely using like old school like funk for sure. So yeah.
So aside from your own studio, how have you seen the city try to encourage the return of arts, music, and dance education in schools and within the community?
Yeah, so I think schools these days are doing a great job getting the arts into their programming. There's also there's a lot of community outreach that's happening within the schools. We're invited to go into the schools on a frequent basis. We go to the elementary schools, we go to high schools, we go into middle schools, we do career fairs, we do presentations. I think there's a lot of appreciation for the arts and schools. There's obviously a magnet school here as well. The Stiver School of the Arts is here. Centerville High School I think they passed a levy. They're building a whole new, I think, dance program, dance studio there. So those opportunities weren't around when I was in high school. It was, if you wanted to dance, you were a cheerleader. So that's what I did. But if there was a dance program, that's probably what I would have done instead. So we're doing a nice job. In terms of educating people about hip hop culture, probably not. Not yet. At the university level, yes, for sure. There's a lot of work going into that. With Wittenberg has a nice program with Julius. He's a professor there teaching hip hop history. And then we had, as you guys know, UD has a great program for hip hop history. I think it was James that was out there doing that. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of him. Is that me? Sorry. If it's me, you can shut it off. Is that me? Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me turn. I had it on so I could communicate with you guys this morning. But it's never on otherwise. UC has a great program. OSU has a great program. Don Aldy's up there. He's educating at the university level. They have some amazing things. They have an event called The Gathering where they just get together and they dance hip hop. So hopefully that will filter down into our K through 12 systems. And hopefully they'll get the right people in those positions. I was just told that they're developing a hip hop dance degree out at a university in Washington State, I think. It's either in Washington or Oregon. So, but again, it's all about, is it the right people in those positions? Or is this going to be, a commercialized representation? So that would be really sad if that happened. So hopefully that's not going to be the case, but yep.
Awesome. So last official question, unless anybody else has any after, but we will talk a lot in the documentary about the way funk has affected the economy in Dayton. Do you see a connection between music and dance education and cultural prosperity?
Oh, for sure, 100%. Yeah, artists thrive. And I think that's because they are taking care of themselves and their bodies. And when you're able to do that, you're able to be successful in whatever it is that you do. I think people that don't have access to the arts are at a disadvantage in their adult lives, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think that I've run into adults that they might not be good at arts, but they weren't exposed to arts or sports or really anything else throughout their childhoods, and they really struggle to find out, well, who am I, what do I like still as grown adults? What is my passion? I'm not really sure what that is. And then that translates into their position. I'm not really sure if I like my job. I'm not really sure. So just really finding, I think when you're younger and you're invited to be part of a culture, or you want to explore the arts, that you're also trying to figure out who you are as an individual, which really carries over into your adult life, for sure. Yeah.
Anybody else?
got a couple questions. Cooking up over here.
You spoke a bit of the political division that leads to certain people not being understanding and accept what is being here at Funk Labs. Do you feel that art can be used to cross that gap, and if so, how?
I do feel like yes, and I do think that for us here at the studio, getting out into the community and showing people what we're actually doing rather than what they think we're doing is important. And that is one of the reasons why when we're asked, hey, will you come perform at this event, that we're there. That we're not some sketchy studio, or that we're not getting into trouble, that we're not listening to music that is profane, that we're not putting small children out on a stage in bikinis, that we are everybody, that we represent everyone, every type of person, every shape, size, color, everything. And so nobody would know those things unless we kind of got out into the community. I'm hoping to open people's minds through that, you know, on a daily basis. It's a lot of work. And, you know, that could be a full-time job. So I have to find times in my own personal life when I can do that. But I am vocal about that personally and professionally. So, yes.
And then, speaking of music and dance education, have you had the chance to pass on your knowledge and passion to your kids? How might that knowledge and passion be ignited in the current generation?
So, my personal kids, like my own children,
Yes.
or the other ones. There's lots of kids here. I'm sorry.
Mention your kids when you're ready.
My kids, okay, yeah. So yeah, my kids, I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. My 12-year-old has autism. He's on the autism spectrum, and he loves it here. He says this is the only place he feels welcome. So on top of everything else we represent, we keep it inclusive and for people of every ability as well. And he just absolutely loves it. It gives him confidence. He has moves that he can take to school that maybe the other kids don't have, and that he's applauded, you know. And so my daughter loves it, but she really likes jazz and ballet and contemporary more so than she would like hip hop, but she's really good at it. So it does come naturally to her, but my son, he really, really loves it here. He has said multiple times, you know, this is the one place where I feel like I've made friends and feel accepted. So I'm hoping that we have nearly 650 students. So that's a lot of kids out into a lot of school environments. So showing people like how cool this is, but what it stands for and what it means. And yeah, anybody can go take dance classes. And you don't need anything special to go to dance class. You don't need a special pair of pants or shoes. You just put your sneakers on, just like in hip hop, and you show up to class in whatever you're wearing at school that day, you know, and so, which is so much fun. But just the social dance aspect, it just really connects you to, you know, your peers. And I'm really hoping that I try not to bring adult issues into my kids' lives. They're too young for that, but when they get a little older, I fully plan to provide like, hey, this is what's gone on in the hip hop culture, and this is what, you know, we need to do to make those changes. And I think my kids would run with that. When I taught the evolution of hip hop Pease, and we put that on the competition stage, it received so much praise. And the kids that were in the piece felt like they were important. They were sharing this message with everyone in the world. There was a lot of tears shed over how important everyone felt like it was. So I do think that the students here that have been part of that are able to share those messages. I'm hoping that they do. And then we can continue the preservation of the culture. We can continue to stand up for hip hop and what it represents and not let it get watered down and sold.